Hi, my name is Valerie Leonard. I work with nonprofit organizations to help them make a stronger impact in their communities. I want to take a few minutes to talk to you today about nonprofit survival tactics in the age of recovery. This is the third of a three-part series. In part one, we talked about the questions we should ask ourselves while doing this work. We also looked at the state of Illinois economy in 2015, taking into account trends in key economic indicators for the state of Illinois. We talked about what this means to you as a nonprofit leader. In part two, we talked about what's happening in the nonprofit sector, what your peers are doing, and how grant makers are responding. In part three, we're going to share 10 strategies for survival. So the first strategy is to assess your current cash position. In fact, you don't know where you're going until you can get that baseline of where you are. So you need to prepare monthly cash projections for at least 12 months. You should include revenues and expenses, that is all the money coming in and all the money going out on a monthly basis. And then you estimate how many months cash you have on hand. That might be 2 months, it might be 3 months. If you're fortunate, it'll be a year. You should identify any cash deficits and then develop strategies for filling those gaps. You should make informed decisions based on the information before you. For example, you might consider delaying hiring or making a major equipment purchase and focus on those things that you absolutely need to keep your programs functioning and to keep your doors open right now. The thing to do is to make sure you avoid across the board cuts. Sometimes we're tempted to say, oh, let's do a 2% cut across the board, but that is not necessarily going to get you where you need to be. Instead, you should take an approach where you prioritize your spending based on your mission, goals, and your values, and ideally any decisions that you make, even though you're in crisis mode, should still be in alignment with your strategic plan. The second thing you do, now that you know how much money you have, now that you know how long hemorrhaging, you need to cut costs and think of low-cost methods of bringing in cash quickly. Some things that I've done in the past are, emergency phone-a-thons with board members, sending out fundraising letters, doing online solicitations. Those quick and easy ways and low-cost ways to bring in funds. And it's unrestricted cash. The third thing you want to do is enlist your funders as partners in your success. Your funders actually have a vested interest in your well-being, and they should know about your challenges very early on, because if you look good, they look good. Because remember, you're in partnership with your funder to help. So you want to ask them to help you with things like facilitating collaborations, and if it is that dire, if you find yourself in a position where you're considering merging with another organization so that the two organizations actually, instead of doing joint ventures and partnerships, actually want to become one organization, a funder can really help you with that type of collaboration. They can actually help you with strategic planning assistance. They can provide technical assistance. Sometimes they might give funds. Sometimes they might lend an executive to help you think things through. Another strategy, for the short term, your funders might be able to give you a PRI, or program-related investment, which is a low-interest loan for the most part. They can provide emergency funding. They can also help you to identify other financial and in-kind resources, and then they can provide assistance with professional development and other capacity building activities. The fourth strategy is conducting a community needs assessment. So in this process, you want to identify key issues, the needs and assets within your community. You also want to describe the current lay of the land, and you want to use these results to then inform your strategic plan, develop and strengthen programs, develop marketing strategies, galvanize grassroots action around needs or issues, determine whether or not the needs have changed. Sometimes we go through a strategic planning process in year one, and year two, the lay of the land is totally different. For example, a year ago today in Chicago, nobody would have ever imagined that the state of Illinois would not have a budget, in the month of August. And, this is really, really throwing our nonprofits for a loop. So you want to make sure that, that one, you keep abreast of changes. You want to be flexible, and you want to make sure that your needs in the community haven't changed, or they may have changed, and you want to be responsive. And then you want to make sure that your programs remain relevant. Okay, so after you have assessed the external environment, you want to look within, and that would mean conducting an organizational assessment. Ideally, you should look at your board structure and your systems, make sure that there are systems in place that you can make decisions effectively, and most importantly, that you can document a record of those decisions. You want to also make sure that there is compliance with regulators and funders' requirements, because quite frankly, nobody's going to be eager to give you money if you haven't given an account of the money that you've been given. So make sure that you have your 990s current. Make sure that you have your files not only with the IRS current, but the files with the Attorney General of your state, as well as the Secretary of State. And if there are any payroll tax issues, make sure that you take care of those. You also want to assess your leadership and management capabilities. If there are weaknesses, you might want to strengthen those through professional development or bringing on new people. But I realize that when you're in a crisis, it's very difficult to actually bring on new hires. You also want to make sure that your management systems are as efficient as possible, and make sure that they're in alignment with your strategic plan. You want to look at your program operations. Again, make sure that those are running smoothly. Make sure that there are mechanisms in place for you to document your successes, document your outcomes, show how you have made an impact to the community, how you have made changes in your clients' lives. You also want to look at your human resources to make sure that your volunteers are equipped to do the job that you're asking them to volunteer for. You want to make sure that your rank and file employees are well trained and knowledgeable of what's expected of them. And again, all of your resources, human and otherwise, need to be in alignment with your strategic plan. And then at this point, probably most importantly, is looking at your financial capacity. Realizing that you're probably in a situation where there's issues with cash flow. Again, being able to respond and make the decisions that will keep you afloat, making sure that you have systems in place that you can adequately track your finances. And your overall goal is to determine whether or not your organization has the capacity to thrive in this current environment. And if you need to shore some areas up, develop a plan and make sure that you share that with your funders. Again, you want to make sure that you have a strategic plan, and we know that strategic planning is a process in which an organization takes stock of its mission, its vision, core values, and make sure it positions itself to capitalize on the changes in its environment. And at the end of the day, you end up with a set of strategies or programs to achieve a set of long-term goals and objectives for the organization. And as I said before, organizations really should make sure that everything else flows from the strategic plan, programs, the hiring of staff, and any decision that you make. So the critical questions through your strategic plan will be, where do we want to go? And that helps us set the strategic direction. And then the next question you want to ask is, how will we get there? So those are dealing with strategies and tactics. So the seventh strategy is entering into collaborations. The reason, I guess, at this point of getting into collaborations, obviously you want to save money, you want to increase efficiencies, and you want to create a greater continuum of care or services for your clients. And most importantly, you want to be able to maximize your impact with as few dollars as possible. So you want to partner with organizations that have similar values, goals, and objectives. And then you want to identify the roles and responsibilities of the partners. And then you formalize the agreement through either an MOU, a partner agreement. And then you want to maintain open and honest communication. And most importantly, develop your exit strategy from the start. In this day and age, it's more important than ever to enhance your organization's level of civic engagement. So you want to follow legislative changes that impact your organization's ability to deliver programs and services. And your more proactive organizations are actually not going to just follow changes, they're going to help to drive changes that will create a more favorable environment for your sector. You want to contact your elected officials with comments or concerns about policies and provide written and oral testimony at public hearings. And in the state of Illinois, it's really important that you stay engaged about the budget and provide written and oral testimony and write articles and letters to the editors of newspapers. And it's not necessarily about budget stuff. It could be any issue that impacts your industry. You want to become part of associations and broad coalitions that provide input into legislation and policies that impact your sector. And examples include the Donors Forum of Chicago and their forum partners, Chicago Rehab Network, and Act Now, After School for Children and Teens. All of these organizations have very strong policy and advocacy arms. Their influence reaches all the way to Washington, D.C., and they make sure that they keep their members engaged and informed every step of the way. Number 9, you want to shore up your organization's management systems. So, as I said before, you want to make sure your organization is in compliance with all regulatory and grant requirements and financial audits, etc. And then you want to make sure that you have up-to-date policies relating to financial management, human resources, program operations that have been approved by the board. And when I say up-to-date, make sure that you stay current with the current laws, current best practices, and from time to time update your policies so that they're reflecting of most current best practices. And number 10, you want to find alternative revenue streams. So you diversify funding sources. You might consider charging fees for some of the products and services of your organization. Things that you've been providing for free that have value might include things like publications, advice that you give to your peers. And you should also consider starting a social enterprise after you've gone through the process of developing a business plan and determining whether or not it was feasible to do so. And then this would keep you from relying so heavily on the state government as well as other funders. You're generating your own income. So you want to make sure that the enterprise is a natural outshoot from the work that you do. For example, a gardening organization might consider developing a farmer's market or a restaurant or something like that. So you don't want to do anything that's too far-fetched. And when I say far-fetched, too far-fetched from what you currently do as an organization, as your core business. So, a parting thought after we reach the calm after the storm. Bold leadership in challenging times means avoiding the natural urge to retreat passively into our own organizations. Instead, we should affirmatively step forward to forge connections with others. We should pull up a chair to the public policy making table and unite as nonprofits. And that message is from the National Council of Nonprofits. So this brings our presentation to an end, and if you have any questions, feel free to call me at 773-571-3886. You can also email me at consulting@valeriefleonard.com, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at ValerieFLeonard, and you should also feel free to visit my website at valeriefleonard.com. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Take care.